I'm bringing in Scott Yarbrough right now, and you want to stick around for someone who doesn't believe in global warming here. So, Scott,
for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. He actually, you know, with the weather we're having in the Midwest, he's not the only one. I've read about people predicting a cooling of the planet rather than a warming of the planet. So, Scott, I just made you the presenter.
Thank you, Dale,
and
welcome.
Thank you, Andre. And Wade, you're calling in, so I think you have to see if I could unmute you. There you are. There's your. I see your screen. I can't hear you yet, Scott. There may have been a PIN number for your. If you call in, you were able to do it right on your website, but I need some volume, buddy. Maybe go up to your audio pin sent. So you have to hit enter the audio pin. And right now we're seeing your emails, so I don't know if you want to be showing that. Scott was invited to join an online summit February 2nd. Do you see the pin, Scott? You have to enter the pin. You're very welcome, Marius. Louise, you're very welcome too. So Scott, did you see the audio pin? It was sent to you? Audio pin. Audio pin sent. That's what I'm getting.
Right now, Dale?
How about now? Got you,
Dale,
Scott.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you, Scott. Can you hear me?
Yep, that's good. Yeah, I had to hang
right.
up and call back in to put the pin in.
Okay. All right. Appreciate you being with us today, Scott. Very nice to meet you. You may want to show a different screen. You're showing your emails, I believe, or a calendar or something like that.
Oh, that should
You want to show a copy of your book? The share screen gives you a chance to select the screen, and I'll have this edited out.
All right. Well, let's just do this. All right. Can you see that? Can you see that now? The
no,
cycle?
Same screen.
Huh. That's interesting. That's not
so
what's up.
unshare it, and then click the share, and it'll give you a choice of which monitor to show. So unshare and then share again.
See, I'm new to this. I'm new to presenting.
I know, it's okay.
I've been to lots of webinars, but I'm
a dinosaur
been
too.
A presenter.
Okay. Well, then you're stretching yourself today. So I tell you what I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to show your website.
Sharing.
Yeah. Oh, there you got it. Share. Right. And then it'll show you what
screen is paused. Stop showing. So it's paused. Now where do I go back to edit?
Share screen. And there you go. We got the cycles.
All right. Very good.
All right. Congratulations, Scott. I tell you, I started to freeze up here, and I was having a mini ice age in my apartment today. So
that's what's going on. Let me tell
right.
you about me, Dale. Thanks, first of all, for having me on.
Okay, go ahead.
In 1975, I was a registered representative of the New York Stock Exchange, Series 7 and Series 3 licensed, and I did that for about 15 years.
Yeah.
So I've been around the market, so all this stuff you guys are talking about, I understand.
Good.
But I'm more of an
you had your own website.
anything else.
You had your own. You had your own website. I read. Yeah.
I had for 5 years. I wrote a nightly market letter called Market Highs and Lows, and that was fun. But boy, that's grueling work. Being on top of the markets day after day after day after day, year after year after year. That's tough. But I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and in 2014, I was divorced, and I lived in Michigan, and I decided I was going to go to Puerto Rico for the winter because I didn't want to do the cold. And when I was there, I was still writing my market letter, and one of the things I was looking at was natural gas because it was so darn cheap. And I thought to myself, if I could figure out maybe what the longer term weather might be, I might be able to coach my subscribers into a good trade or a longer term investment in natural gas. So I started reading everything I could find, and for about 4 months I did nothing but read and look and try to analyze this market. And after that point in time, I came back, and it was just about 4 years ago I wrote the book, and so it was 2015 when it was published. And basically all the things that I looked at, and I found about 3 different things that kind of all pointed in the same direction.
Was one Wheeler?
No.
Okay.
My work basically came from 3 different areas that all kind of seemed to point in the same direction and confirm each other. And that was NASA's work. It was work of a group out of the UK, and it was the Russian scientists who have a way of measuring kind of the budget of the heating and the cooling of the Earth called total solar irradiance. And they all kind of seem to point towards the same thing. And basically what I found scared the hell out of me. We're in for some pretty serious stuff. The stuff you're seeing right now is just the beginning of it. And the thing that I find that is probably the most, what I tend to lean on the most or to believe the most is what you're basically seeing here in front of you. The group in England took all the sunspot cycles that are one of the oldest scientific series we have on the planet. They go all the way back to 1400. And so they cataloged all these cycles, and what you see out of it is what's in front of you there. These are all the various cycles that they were able to identify. And what they did was they built an algorithm, which is in the book on Amazon, that points out to where they go. And their forecasts have been pretty damn good. So kind of the essence of it is that we are heading towards the coldest weather that we've had in about 300 years, actually since the time from 1790 to about 1820, which was called the Dalton Minimum. And during that time frame, there was a lot of starvation, a lot of food shortages. In fact, in Europe, prices were so expensive that people ate their horses because they couldn't afford to pay for oats to feed them. That's how bad it was. And it was widespread throughout the world. And we're going to, based on these forecasts, we're going to repeat that almost identically.
So where do you live, Scott?
I live in Florida now.
Okay, and you feel that that's going to be an area that is, excuse the pun, weather this cooling, mini ice age, whatever we're going to have. Is that why you're in Florida?
That's exactly why I'm here. I left Michigan a couple of years ago. The writing is on the wall. You're starting to really see it start to manifest itself right now. These polar vortexes that they're talking about will become more and more and more commonplace. We are just, I'm not going to give away all the book, but the first solar minimum low is due 2020, 2021. So you're not going to see the coldest in this particular cycle for another couple of years. So this is just the beginning of it. Okay. Technically, we have been cooling since 1990. If you look at this information.
So why are the polar ice sheets melting? If
they're not. They're not melting.
Yeah. Okay. So I just saw a news report last night that said there was a hole in one of the ice shelves that was the size of Manhattan, and that was going to contribute to a rise in sea levels. So you're saying that that's fake news?
Well, that's what I believe is fake news. Let's back the truck up here a little bit.
Okay.
Back when Al Gore, decided this was something that everybody should be aware of.
The internet. After he invented the internet.
Yeah, while he was busy inventing the internet and doing all this other stuff. Actually, there's a great video out from a group in the UK about what a joke this all is. But the bottom line was that he said that by 2014, based on all their evidence, that the poles would be melted. Well, that's kind of come and gone. And actually, NASA takes pictures. And last summer they, and we're waiting for the next one, but last summer they took pictures from space. And their report
that was the source of this. This was a source. They claimed it was a NASA source from, a satellite that showed this image of a gigantic hole in the ice sheets. That
was it in the Arctic or the Antarctic?
I don't know. I think it was in the Arctic.
Well, it's
okay. I'm not. But anyway, check it out.
First of all, let's go back and find out why all this started. This all started because somebody affiliated with Gore said, we need to figure out a way to raise more money for the government. So really what's been going on since he started all this is a move to try to convince the public that we're causing all this problem, all this global warming, and so we need to tax all the energy on the planet in order to stop this. It's been nothing more than a tax grab. And a lot of people were paid to write papers to promote this. My book was reviewed by Professor William Happer at Princeton, who said that my book had, good merit and that there's a lot of truth to what we're talking about. And here's the bottom line. The bottom line is if the sun were to go out tomorrow, how much longer would the people on this planet last? Not very long. The bottom line is that big yellow ball in the sky, and you can see these cycles here, that big yellow ball, if we could take a picture of it for 3,000 years, like a movie of it for 3,000 years, and then back it up and run it at full, at real fast speed, what you would see would be like a light bulb that would, get brighter and dimmer and brighter and dimmer. And
cycles.
Exactly, like everything else that especially the people that are in the markets know about. I mean, everything is secular.
All right, so I have a question. Solar minimums, maximums, they're normally, about 10 years?
The normal Schwab cycle is like 11 years.
Okay,
so a little bit.
All right. So what makes this solar minimum so much different than the ones we've had in the past every 11 years?
Well, because as you can see by these cycles, there are other things that affect. Now, what causes this? Kind of common wisdom is that this has something to do with the big planets in our solar system, and that our solar system is much more electric and magnetic than people give it credit for. And so that when these big old planets are out there whooshing around through space, they change the electrical current in our solar system. And they believe that's what, sunspots are an indication that the sun is very hot.
Right.
And so if you go back and you look at commodity, now W.D. Gann, I'm sure some of you have heard of him.
Right. If you don't learn how to change your mind, you won't have any change left. W.D. Gann.
Well, he was a pretty tremendous guy, and I learned a lot studying him for the last 40 years. But the solar
what's interesting, Scott, and one of the reasons why I brought you in, because I've had a lot of guests talking about a Kondratiev winter. And all of this, with potential the end of the bull markets and stocks. But, what you're predicting is more rare and unusual than predicting a stock market crash, which isn't that easy because it doesn't happen that often. So is this part of the chondroti of winter, that it actually manifests on the physical plane so that the whole globe not only goes into an economic winter, but you're talking about it being geological winter?
I believe both of those are correct, and I think they're interlaced.
Okay.
One's going to lead to the other.
How do we make money? How do we make money on this while we're, moving towards the equator? Huh?
That's a good question. And probably the way to do that is you have to remember that these 11-year cycles, we're going to have this first low in a couple, 2-3 years. That'll be a really, really cold time frame. Then we get a respite for 5 to 6 years, up into about 2025, 2026. And then the final push comes down where the sun should finally be at its coolest in about 2033, 2035. The other thing is that at that final low is that you'll have the cumulative effect of what's going on right now that's going to last another 15 years. And wow. What's going to happen is, and this is a listen, I can tell you, I have spent many sleepless nights trying to figure out how this is going to manifest itself. But we could be anywhere from just, super high energy prices and super high food prices to all out anarchy. How do you know? There's no way to really predict. What happened in the Dalton minimum was, and this is the big wild card of the whole deal, is that if you've been paying attention here the last 3 or 4 years, what's been going on? Volcanoes have been popping up all over the place, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now there's a reason for that.
They cool the planet. They cool the planet, right?
Well,
the dust,
indirectly.
The ash. Okay.
Well, yep, it creates sulfur dioxide, but here's what happens. As the Earth cools, imperceptibly, it's shrinking. And so as it shrinks, just like if you took a balloon you blew it up in an 80-degree room and then took it out into a 40-degree temperatures, what's going to happen to that balloon?
Yeah.
It's going to shrink. Colder air contracts air, it compresses it. And so what happens is during these cold spells, and this has been going on forever, is that the Earth imperceptibly shrinks. And when it does that, it puts pressure on the magnet chambers. And just like it happened in Hawaii last year. And it's been going on all over the planet.
And the fault lines. And the fault lines.
Well, when you get these kind of pressures, who knows what it's going to do to the our planet's still molten, metal in the middle of it. And so yeah, these pressures are there, but the point is that volcanoes and the activity and the continued activity and expanding activity are a sign that we're cooling. So here's the big wild card. The big wild card is the one out in Wyoming at the Yellowstone caldera.
Oh, yeah. Super volcano.
Yep. And what happened in 1815, speaking of super volcanoes, Mount Tambora in Malaysia or Indonesia exploded. It was so violent and so huge that it spilled all this ash up into the atmosphere, put all this sulfur dioxide up there, and that acts as a true greenhouse barrier. And so what happened is now the sunlight doesn't get through to the planet. And in 1816, it was called the year without a summer. They could not get crops to grow in New England. They would try to plant crops, and every 3 or 4 days there'd be a frost. It was that cold in June and July and August. And that was an ugly thing. Of course, people were much more self-sufficient back then than they are today. So how's this change? How's it play out? It's hard to know. One good thing is we have electricity. And that's I'm not calling for the end of the world here, but it could be that a lot of people are going to freeze to death and a lot of people are going to be hungry. And so some of the things that are in my book just not only what caused it and why it's happening, is how to deal with it and things that you should do to protect your family. Here's one of the things that's in the book that I recommended that people do 4 years ago. If you live in Kentucky or Tennessee or Missouri or Oklahoma or Kansas, those people are not used to dealing, or northern, Georgia. These people are not used to dealing with these really frigid cold temperatures. What do you think happens, like what's happened in the last week, to these people's homes that have well and septics?
Yeah, they're not functioning.
Their pipes freeze and they break. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you happen to be, let's say you get a big precipitation event that blows in off of the Pacific, like we had happen last year, and you get a huge snowstorm in Kansas, and you got 1.5 feet or 2 feet of snow, and these people down there are not used to working in this kind of weather because they're not used to it. This is going to be very new. So let's say you're out of electricity for 2 weeks, and you don't have a well and septic, you don't have water, and you can't get to the market to buy food. You see where the problems lie here?
Yeah.
People need to, people need to prepare for what the potential worst can be, and that's.
So do you have MREs and freeze-dried food products to rely on?
Well, that's part of it. Yeah, there's other ways to. There's lots of different ways. MREs are expensive, but they're easy. And
what's the weather going to be like? What's the weather going to be like in Florida? Should this scenario play out? Is it going to be like Chicago is now?
Dale, it's already. No, I don't think it'll be that cold.
Okay.
We've
How about
already
Southern California?
Had a cold winter.
Southern California.
Well, fortunately, they'll be a little bit better off. Southern California, Arizona, Florida would be good spots to be, although there's not a lot of water in Arizona. But
right,
because
they're having water problems.
Yeah, because California is on the Pacific Ocean, it tends to be a little bit warmer just from the sea breezes that blow in. It keeps it if you're near the coast. We've had a cool winter here in Florida already. I yesterday, for the first time in 10 days, was able to wear a short sleeve shirt. That's how cool it's been.
Right.
Surprising.
It's been cold. It's been cold here in California and Arizona this year too. We've had 20-degree nights in the deserts here. Let me ask you this: do you know if our president, who doesn't really, he doesn't talk about an ice age, but he's very negative, or is not a believer in global warming? Do you know if he is a proponent and knows about this kind of potential event? He actually put out a tweet. Joe Perry on our team shared it with me that with what Chicago was going through, that we need to send some of the global warming people there to heat things up a little bit. So anyway, has he read your book?
He's got a sense. Yeah, well, actually, I sent a copy to him and to Scott. I can't think of his name now. Scott, he is the EPA director, and so they've got it. Now, here's what you got to remember: is another third of the book is NASA oriented. There's some people there that are pretty damn smart. They know what's coming. It's public knowledge.
And they don't want to create any kind of panic. So I mean, there's so many scenarios like power grid failure, pole shifts, ice age, and what I like about the ice age is that it's just a cycle from it's just a cycle. The other is depends on some type of bad actors. So very interesting that you are doing this. Do you still trade, Scott? Do you trade the markets?
Oh, yeah.
Or are you pretty wrapped up?
Yeah, I went short yesterday. I think. I shorted the indexes yesterday. I had I forecast a high at 27.10 yesterday, and I think we're in for Yep, I think we're gonna. Well, it's more than that. I do astro work.
Okay. Okay. Bradley model
Dan
stuff?
was an astrologer. I mean, I studied him for a long time. But anyways,
okay.
Let me go back to NASA for a second. I do trade,
ahead.
yeah.
All right.
NASA. There's a guy named Dr. David Hathaway who's a research scientist with NASA. And again, this is in the book, and for your listeners, it's called "The New Ice Age: The Truth About Climate Change" by me, Scott Yarbrough. It's on Amazon, $6. Hopefully, you guys should trade enough money to be able to afford that.
Yeah, they should be after the week we've had.
All right, because there's nothing better than making money in the markets. But he developed this technique a while back, and he found that because they watch the sun all the time and they're paying close attention to what's going on, he found out that there's like a conveyor belt that runs around like the center of the sun, and it moves the plasma around. It's kind of like, the sun is kind of like a boiling pot of water, in that it kind of has a pattern about how it works, and all this bubbling hydrogen and helium and everything. And so he found that this pattern, and they had watched it long enough that depending on the speed of what this conveyor belt was moving, gave them kind of a longer term look at what was going to happen to the temperatures of the sun down the road. Well, a couple, 3-4 years ago, he said, I've never seen it so slow.
Yeah.
It's as slow as we've ever witnessed it. Like 1 kilometer.
Yeah, I mean, last year I kept hearing about, we had all these massive solar storms that we were going to get hit with, I don't know, an F.A.C.E. I don't know how, if that's even the right letter, but that there was going to be, that the sun was misbehaving and sending out these things that could affect our telecommunications, and that wasn't true either.
No, the solar flares happen all the time, but they're kind of pointed, and so if they're shooting off on the other side of the sun, it doesn't make any difference. We actually are under right now, yesterday and today, which is probably to some degree has something to do with this little warming trend that's coming up through the middle of the country right now. Is there's a big hole in the center of the sun that's spewing out a lot of solar wind out right towards us right now. It's hitting us right now. There's a website called spaceweather.com, and you can go there and see about that. They watch all this stuff all the time, and so
Scott,
it has an effect.
Do you have a picture of your book on a slide or something, or show your website page that shows your book and a picture of you, so people know how to get a hold of you?
You want to see a picture of me?
Oh, well, no, your book.
Don't scare me like that, Dale.
You asked for it, so it's a nice cover, and
How about this one? This is
all right.
This is the solar cycles. This is the 11-year cycle, and if you go back to the left there at 1990, that's where the sun was at its warmest, and you can see that you can see the peak there about 200 on the index. Okay, so we're back. We're back down here near getting close to 2020 again. We're heading to the solar minimums. But the scary part is, and again, the forecast isn't on this chart, but if you draw up the next up move, it's going to peak about 50 or 60 at the peak of the next cycle. That's the forecast.
Looks like a descending triangle with a breakdown under zero that would get you negative 200.
Oh, let's not hope for that. That would be bad.
Yeah. Anyway,
but
nice. So, definitely lower highs. You could tell, it's weakening. Lower highs in 2000, and coincidentally, that was a .com bubble at the high up there in 2000.
Amazingly enough, it works with the economies. Here's now I know how to do this. Here's the conveyor belt thing that Hathaway talked about, and how they measure the speed of these movements of these branches of the conveyor belt. Let me see if I can find a picture of my
do you know who Peter Temple is? Because he talks about this a lot. He's in Canada.
Yeah. I know who Peter Temple is. He's a
Okay.
pompous. Never mind. But
Okay. All right. Yeah, I
spoke
asked
with him,
him
and
why.
he seemed like he knew everything already.
Yeah, he went to New York to read Wheeler's manuscripts. I asked him why he was living in Canada, if he believed in this. Is Canada going to be better off than the U.S.?
Oh, hell no. Hell no.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's what I thought. He said, "Well, it was an unusually warm winter up there, and anyway, people are very attached to where they live. Most people, let's face it, they're not going to. People aren't going to move because of this.
Well,
don't you
I think what'll happen, and I think another winter or two of this, and people are going to sure question it.
Oh, you know what that is? That is true. I moved. I grew up in Chicago. I didn't like I didn't like the winter, Southern California.
Yeah, well, there you go.
20 years.
Yeah, that's a better spot to be because it will be warmer there, and a lot of stuff. The winds blow westerly.
But I'd be better off closer to the equator, wouldn't I? Like somewhere in Central America, where it's too hot now, like Panama. It might be beautiful there.
Panama, Ecuador, Costa Rica. Kind of the cool thing about those things is that you can drive from the ocean where it's 90 and up into the mountains and it's 70 in an hour. And it's kind of like being in Flagstaff and Phoenix.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Yeah, I lived in Arizona for a while. That's what I would do for respite. I'd go to northern Arizona. Our CEO lives there, so he knows about it. And, it was cold in Phoenix and Scottsdale this winter. We were getting ice there and ice here in Temecula. So what a great presentation. I'm glad that you reached back to me, Scott, and what else you want to show us here?
It's the cover of the book.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Congratulations on, taking the time. I know it's not easy to write a book, because I've tried it. And you really have to be passionate about the subject, and then to put your name at the bottom of it on a controversial type topic like this, you're a warrior. And I'd now like to call you my trading warrior brother, now that I know your top picking markets and you're a GAN guy. And Scott, I wish you a lot of success with this book. And if 10 families take heed and this ends up happening, you've done a great work. So
that was my whole goal, was to try to warn the world of what's coming. So people spread the word, because you need to put food away, you need to put water away, you need to pay attention.
How about currency, Scott? Should everyone hold physical metals?
Well, I think being a stockbroker for a lot of years, precious metals should be a part of everyone's holding to some degree in the smaller denominations. But there are other things that are worth holding too.
You can't eat gold.
You can, but it's not very nourishing.
You'd break your teeth.
Well, but there's a place for it. It's like everything else. You want a diversified portfolio, but having number 10-pound cans of rice and beans in your closet is another thing that is something that you need. A way to get water, a way to purify water. I mean, I don't know.
It's called. You need to be a prepper, basically. And
those people, we owe them a big debt of gratitude, because they have made it easy to go do this now. If you can we can buy this stuff online from Walmart,
right?
To get ready to do that. And so you want to plan for the worst and hope for the best. More importantly, is the market looks kind of sluggish here after this, quote, good news. And don't forget, folks, it's not the news. It's how the market reacts to the news that's important.
People who buy headlines today sell newspapers tomorrow.
There you go. You got that?
Scott, pleasure meeting you, and thank you so much. And everyone that is listening live or sees the video later, you could find Scott's book, at Amazon, and you're not that active on Twitter. I'd give out your handle. I'll give it out anyway. The New Ice Age Now, is that it? At the New Ice Age Now?
Correct.
Okay. Well, Scott, have a nice warm weekend. And it was, and you know what? It was really cool having you, man.
You used all the temperature jokes. I love it.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Dale.
You're very welcome.
Everybody take care and have a good weekend.
Yeah, and that's it, F.A.C.E. Have a great weekend. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. And we'll see you on Monday. Good hunting the rest of the day. Adios, my trading warrior brothers and sisters, and you're welcome.